name is Aidan Charron with EarthDay.org, and today I'll be speaking with Marie Sallois, the Corporate and Sustainable Development Director at the International Olympic Committee. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Marie, you are the Director of Sustainability at the IOC. Can you kind of demystify that a bit for people listening? In practice, what does that mean you do at the Olympics and for the Olympics?
Yes, thank you for your question. My role is really about supporting the sustainable transformation across the Olympic movement. So for the organization, for the Olympic Games, and for the Olympic movement. So when we work with the organizing committee, our work starts actually before they are even elected. Then we support the few years of preparation, games time, and we continue actually working with them after games. So what do I do for 2 weeks at the games? Most of my work is about transferring knowledge from, in this case, Paris 2024 to LA 28 and Brisbane 32. So it's really about uncovering the best practices, the innovation, trying to find out, what could be done even better. And another role is to be, answering media requests. So a lot of media exposure. And third is about stakeholder engagement, because we have a lot of stakeholders coming, both institutional and commercial, and I do a lot of relationship.
We've heard the phrase greenwashing a lot. It's been thrown at us a couple times. It feels like the good and the bad actors often get lumped in together when it comes to greenwashing. So what do you say when people claim that this drive for sustainability by the Olympics as a whole, not just Paris, is about optics and not real sustainable and real green achievements?
I will say that they need to follow the results we have been delivering, and we are delivering every day. It's true that we do not necessarily speak a lot about them before we deliver.
Right.
So sometimes people do not know. And I'm always surprised by when I meet people, I explain what we do. They say, "Oh, really? We didn't know." Because we tend to really deliver before we speak. And this is why, when I'm telling you, for instance, the IOC as an organization is, as we speak, reducing its carbon footprint by 30% for this Olympiad compared to the last. Like the Games will reduce their footprint in Paris by 50% compared to the last two editions. When I tell you that we have 300 organizations that have already joined Sport for Climate Action, I say, these are results. And I want to be judged on the result we deliver. And I feel that as an industry, we walk the talk and we lead by example.
For the Paris 2024 Olympics, how have they risen to the challenge of minimizing plastic and limiting the carbon footprint? And can you take us through some of the biggest achievements to date?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to know that Paris 2024 is the first edition to fully benefit from the strategy we launched in 2015. Why it matters is because as part of this strategy, we have one of the key pillars, which is sustainability. So the level of ambition we set in engaging with the future host, including Paris, was very high. So the dialogue was with Paris, how we can achieve this sustainable ambition. And Paris, from day one, decided to aim at reducing their carbon footprint by 50%. Why it matters? It matters because it was not an afterthought. It was actually something they decided at a very early stage in their journey, and they ran their organization with a financial budget and a carbon budget. It means that carbon has been a decision-making factor at any step along the journey. And this is why they actually now achieve the result they had aimed for, which is a very important reduction. And how do they do that? They took carbon into account when they decided about the venue for the Games. And 95% of this venue are either existing or temporary. They also took carbon into account when they decided, how to power these venues. So they have actually connected these venues to the grid, to the energy grid, and all the venues now benefit from renewable energy that you can trace back to the source, whether it's solar, for instance, or wind. And it means that the venue do not rely on generators, diesel generators, like it was done in the past, even for the peak of the activity. So it's very, very, new, and it's behind the scenes. So you don't see that when you go to the games, but it's major in terms of how the industry could operate in the future. Another thing that was really taken into account from the beginning is all the venues are located within 10 kilometers and they're all connected to public transportation. So it means that you can go to all the venues using public transportation and even bike to the venue, which is also new because thanks to 400 kilometers of biking lanes that have been accelerated thanks to the games. So you see that carbon was a decision-making factor at any step along the journey, including in something that will be visible to all, the meals you will be able to eat at games time, because they have much more vegetarian components, and 80% is coming from the surroundings of Paris. So everything has been screened so that at the end, we get to this 50% reduction. And actually what is interesting is also what you don't see, because a lot has been about avoiding buying, avoiding quantities. Mm-hmm. So it's really about trying to question ourselves about, okay, do we really need everything we're used to use? So there are a lot of things that you don't see actually, but the fact that you don't see them is what helps get to the 50%.
Yeah, I spent a couple weeks in Paris last year, and just the public transportation system and the bike system was absolutely incredible, especially coming from the United States. And from my home state of North Carolina, we don't really have much of a public transportation system, so I'm glad that they're able to utilize it for the Paris Olympic Games. So kind of to build on that, how have improvements been made since the Tokyo Olympics a couple of years ago? What improvements in sustainability have been made since then? And then how do we plan on kind of keeping that momentum building?
So as you know, we do not like to compare editions because they obviously have each of them a value proposition that is very different, and they happen at a given point in time in a certain geography. But it's true that every edition tries to aim higher, and this is normal, in line with the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger together. So in Tokyo, there was a lot of emphasis on circularity, especially, in the podium, how we recycle plastic for the podium, in also how the electronic appliances and phones have been reused for the medals. And there was also an emphasis on hydrogen. So typically, in the fleet, but also in powering some of the buildings in the Olympic Village. So that was really the value proposition of Tokyo, circular economy and hydrogen. In the case of Paris, it's really about reducing the carbon footprint, using this carbon budget as a driver of all the decision-making process. So you see, there are different solutions to a common challenge that we have is to reduce emissions. But obviously, hydrogen will help, circularity will help. So when you combine innovation for each edition of the Games, at the end, you have a portfolio of solutions that can help not only the Olympic movement, but broader than that, sport and even other industries. So we really aim at the Games to be a platform for innovation and showcase what is feasible.
So holding a swimming event in the Seine River has been a media kind of obsession lately. I'm sure you've noticed. And will there be marathon and triathlon swimming events in this river? And with the first swim being scheduled for July 30th, I believe, how do you plan on achieving that? How do you clean up the river to make it swimmable? How can you guarantee that our athletes are safe when they're swimming in the river?
So, first of all, let me tell you that I'm a born Parisian. And my family has been in Paris for quite a few generations. So, I don't know if you know the painter Renoir, which is a famous French painter that is actually exhibited in a lot of American museums. And you have a very famous painting from Renoir, which is called Swimming in the Seine. And he did back from the 19th. So at the time, people were swimming in the Seine. Actually, my grandmother had the opportunity to swim in the Seine. And my mother was swimming on the Seine, after the war. And it was not using the water of the Seine, but it was on the Seine, and it was very famous for swim fashion shows. And when I was born, we had actually motorways along the Seine. And it was no longer feasible to swim in the Seine because of industrialization and because of the development of cars. So it has been actually an ambition of politicians for decades to clean the Seine. And what the Games have brought is actually the acceleration factor and the convening power. So certainly it could have happened, in 200 years probably it would have happened at some point. But thanks to the game, suddenly, thanks to its convening power, different stakeholders, politicians from different, corners of the spectrum of politics came together and decided that we will meet this milestone and clean the River Seine for the games. So local collectivity, the public authorities have invested 1.4 billion in the cleaning of the Seine, which, for instance, meant connecting the boats on the Seine, River Seine to the sewage system, connecting the houses along the Seine to the sewage system, because not all of them were, and also creating a huge reservoir to contain water in case of heavy rainfalls. So all this has happened in only a few years, while for decades it was a dream. So this has already happened, it's legacy in the making. And more importantly, a lot of competencies have been developed on how to monitor the quality of the water. So it means that today, every day, on the City of Paris website, you have, and it's very transparent, and everybody can have a look, the water quality on a given day. It means that sometimes it's not good, but it's transparent. And you know why? And the next day, it might be good. So today, it's still, about adapting, to the context. It's still finding corrective measures. And we have been actually suffering a lot in Europe recently of very heavy rainfalls, which in all contexts are very difficult to manage. So I was discussing the other day with someone from Denmark, and in the harbor of Copenhagen, they have actually cleaned also, the waters. But when they have heavy rainfalls, they can't swim. So right. I would say that now we have a system in place that could allow people to swim in the Seine, provided we do not have heavy rainfalls. So we definitely hope that this summer, now that we have had heavy rainfalls for weeks or months, it's over, and we will be able to have all this competition taking place in the Seine. But anyhow, the legacy is already there.
That's absolutely incredible. I hope they can have the chance to swim in it again. So why is it so important that the Olympics set a good example on doing right by the planet? Like, why is your job so important when it comes to sustainability, and just how big are the Olympics in the environmental world?
It's extremely important for two reasons. One, because as any industry, we have a responsibility. And it's really a race against time, to meet our commitments to climate action. So we are very, very committed, and we take this responsibility extremely seriously. The second reason, and unlike other industry, we have an amazing power to inspire billions of people and to convene people. And we take also this as an opportunity, to inspire people to take actions. So not just the stakeholders, but also any fan that can be engaged by athletes. And a lot of athletes are actually ambassadors of topics of sustainability. So this is the second dimension that makes us part of the solution, even more than other industry. And this is why, we have created different platforms like the Sport for Climate Action platform, where we really galvanize organizations to take to take commitments as well, whether it's within the Olympic movement or beyond, in sport at large.
Yeah, I was very unfamiliar with sustainability within the Olympics until I got into this field, and now I'm like, oh, they are doing absolutely fantastic things. Those cardboard beds aren't for the reason they say they are. Like, all these construction is sustainable.
Yeah.
But as we look ahead to the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028, how will that be more sustainable than Paris can be? Can you give us some concrete examples of the ways we plan, or the plans you have set forth for LA?
Yeah, so a few things. Thank you. Indeed, each context is different. And one of the things that we change with strategy is really, that in the past, we're expecting the host to adapt to the games, while now it's really us adapting to the host. So the context of LA is very different from the one in Paris, and we have to take this into account. Now, saying that, we know that LA will take a full reuse approach, radical reuse approach, when it comes to venues, for instance. It's a huge city with a lot of sport infrastructure, brand new, state of the art. with campus of big universities, and we are going to use the most of what the host territory can offer. This is why, for instance, the Coliseum that already hosted the games in 1932 and in 1984 will see the games coming back again to this venue. But also another venue that was used for diving in previous editions will be reconverted will be reconverted for diving. And so you see, it's really looking at what exists. And typically for venues, 100% exist. No need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So I think that's a very interesting way forward. And yes, we will also see innovation, I believe, in embracing artificial intelligence. It's a beginning, but I'm sure we will use artificial intelligence to optimize even more the operations. I can't tell you how because it's too new, but come back in 4 years and let's discuss again.
I love that. I love the connection between kind of old tech and new tech and just realizing like we have technologies that have worked and we have these things that have worked. And also let's utilize some of the new things coming out. Frankly, AI goes completely over my head, so I will come back to you, somebody who's much smarter than myself, to come ask questions about it. But we know Olympic fever is starting to build up. But what makes the Olympics so special? Why do we all care about it so much? Why is it this huge global phenomena every 4 years?
Because the Olympic Games is not just a multi-sport event. It's sport, yes, but it's more than sport. In a context where, conflicts are on the rise, where we see a lot of tensions within communities, after COVID, where people didn't get a lot of opportunities to meet, it's a huge and the only one opportunity to gather the world in peace, in unity, in all its diversity. And this is why it makes them so unique. This is the only event that will gather athletes from over 200 territories in peace this summer. And that's what we are all longing for. Obviously, to look at amazing performance from the athletes, but also the world being united in peace.
So sports tend to use a lot of resources. We mentioned, using old buildings when it comes to building the tracks or playing the fields and equipment, but running shoes, all of these use a ton of plastic. Can you foresee a world where we make this change and we move away from plastic and we kind of find alternatives to it, or even think backwards towards some older materials?
So thank you. I mean, you used a word that is very important to us: change. Actually, the motto of a strategy is change or be changed. So we recognize that sports, like probably all industries, have to reinvent itself. Mm-hmm. And it's better to embrace change than to be imposed change. And this is really the mindset that has driven us in the last couple of years. And this is why we engage the wide ecosystem of the Olympic movement to try to look at alternative solutions. And as we speak, a lot of federations are actually reinventing the field of play, using new materials, for instance, to use less water, or getting rid of plastic and find organic material to replace plastic. So yes, we're aiming at a world where we'll get rid of plastic at some point. And all the federations are thinking about that already.
That's incredible. That's my current scope of work. So I'm always real passionate about coming up with alternatives to plastic and kind of thinking of different ways we can bring everybody into that movement. Mm-hmm. But EDO is wishing you and the athletes taking part in a very successful Paris Games. But before you go, I have to ask, what is your favorite event at the Games and why is that your favorite? Are you a Winter Olympics person? I know you're going to say you're a Summer Olympics person because that's the one that you're managing currently. But what is your favorite Games?
So the beauty of the Olympic Games is they propose so many sports that usually you don't have one favorite. You go and but even watch sports that you normally are not exposed to. Yeah. But I must admit, in Paris, I will have a favorite event, and that will be the concluding event of the Olympic Games, the women's marathon. Why? Because, as you know, Paris 2024 will be the parity games for the first time after over a century of trying to get there. We'll have exactly 50% of the athletes who will be women in the field of play. And for the first time, the female marathon will be taking place after the men's marathon. And not only that, but it will take a route that is extremely symbolic for French people. because it's a route that women took during the French Revolution from Paris to Versailles to bring the king back. And so it's not only very insightful and meaningful for the Olympic Games because of this focus on gender equality and parity at the Games, but also in the French ecosystem and the context, it's extremely meaningful. And the medal will be awarded in the closing ceremony. And it will be very touching to see these, women's athletes getting their medals at the closing of the Parity Games. And the second event I will be definitely going to watch is a marathon for all, which is a first in the Olympic Games. So the general public will be able to run along the same route as the Olympians from Paris to Versailles during the night in between the two events. So for me, these two will be really highlights.
That is absolutely, I had no idea. That is awesome. I had no idea. That's absolutely incredible. Well, Marie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Is there anything else you'd like to say or anything else you'd like anybody to know about your work or the Olympics and their sustainability goals?
I would just say stay tuned and watch us.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope to talk to you again, hopefully about AI and the way that we're moving forward in sustainability at the Olympics. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you, Aidan.